Hello there, I'm another Magento dev, and in this video we're going to be looking at sort of raising the bar a little bit in terms of the complexity of understanding the block, or the complexity of a module that helps us understand the block a little bit further, and basically putting a module together. You know, a bit of a crash course really in module development again, but from a different perspective. You know, to give another sort of perspective on things. I want to change some functionality, some default functionality in Magento. I don't like this functionality for all sorts of reasons here. The cat ID, the way it filters, all that type of stuff. It isn't particularly helpful having the filter here when you have. You know, you have the categories and they exist with a nice URL. I would prefer to get rid of the categories from the filter and have them and have an actual menu here rather than, you know, filters for the categories. So there's functionality in the admin here to be able to switch off category filter in the layered nav, which I'll do in a bit, but what I want to do is I want to replace it with some custom functionality, and I want to insert the block, my new block of code, which would be the filter, or which would be the output of the actual navigation based off the page that you're on. So basically the groceries here being the parent page would show the children of that parent categories. So beans, sauces. So basically it'll look exactly the same, except the URLs will be sort of nice URLs. It'll go straight to the category, and there'll be none of this sort of how many products are in the category filter. It will be classed as a menu. Right. So where do we start? Let's kick it off. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to go into our project. And as I said, I'm going to create this as a module because it's purely functional. This, I'm not changing the design on the front end or anything. Like, I'm literally going to insert different functionality for the exact same piece of real estate within Magento, which is that piece of categories menu. So I need a module, and I have my sort of. Obviously, we've done this plenty of times on this channel now. And I'm going to create it with my Magento wizard. I want it in my Adam vendor, and I'm going to call it layered categories. Got a ring to it. Categories. There we go. Layered categories, and that's going to create me a module in here, the base module, which gives me my module XML with my version and my namespace, my composer JSON, and my registration PHP, which are all required for a module. So if you're creating it manually, that's what you've got to create. And I will put this little module up on GitHub for you to download. But yeah, we're away with this. And if you're using the Magento wizard, then you know you're with me. Right, and so what do we need in order to, you know, as a dev, right, what do we need now making an assessment? So, and what I like to do is I just like to sort of start scaffolding it out. I know I'm going to need a block because I know I'm going to go to Magento and I'm going to get categories, right? So I need to do that in a block. So I'm going to put a block folder in there. And I know that I need a way of displaying this on the front end, so I'm going to have a view folder as well. Because view folder, in terms of theme development and front end development, is analogous to the sort of front end file structure. So, like I say, in there you got layouts and templates. In view, you can then branch off either into admin HTML or, which I've done in another video with regards to admin, so check that one out. I might put a link if I can remember to. If not, you'll just have to search. Front end. So if I can go, or I can go into the front end namespace, which takes me basically to here, because design folder, or sort of your theme, is all front end. So that's sort of the difference. So you've got to sort of code up or queue up your module or configure your folder structure to deal with front end you know, specifically. And then within that, I'm going to have a layout, definitely, because I need to get to that part of the code on the front end, and insert a block and a block with my functionality. And then I'm also going to need a templates folder for my templates, because I'm going to need a couple of them. So I'm happy up to now. I've got this sort of in the right structure. Obviously, I do this because I have dyslexia and I struggle with naming folders correctly. I often make spelling mistakes and I make mistakes. And if I'm doing everything all at once and I'm checking front end code and I'm checking functionality, and you've probably seen it on this channel before, I have a real problem with just basic spelling on actual folders. So I'd rather rule that out and double check that at the beginning. But that's just my way of working. So I just check that I've got things the right way around, and VS Code is really helpful here, because I'm used to now seeing these sort of pictures or icons in front of certain folders, like front end has this icon, so immediately I know that I've spelt things correctly. So yeah, that's really helpful, just as an extra, as an aside there. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I want to test that I'm in the right area in the front end. So again, this is all just sort of ruling out mistakes, if anything, and I think this is probably a really good sort of strategy for beginners, where basically anything can go wrong, and if you do too much and you don't test often enough, you're not going to know in the chain where you've broke it. So the next thing I like to do is I like to get a block showing, just with the word test or something like that, in the area where I want to actually put my code. So essentially I do things front to back. So I go front end and then I'll write my block at the end. So I've ruled out any sort of display based errors. As I said, folder names and structures is one of the main ones for me. So I get that out the way early. Right then. So again, we're going to show the working out on this. So what I essentially want to replace this exact code here. I'm happy with it looking exactly like this. So what I want to do is I want to find out where I'm working, and I like to always grab an ID. You know me, I like to grab an ID and I like to search for it within Magento. So I like to go into my vendor folder and I like to just run a search for an ID, because what it often brings up is and I know I labour on this on my channel, so forgive me if you've seen it before, but there's nothing like a bit of practice to refine your skills. So basically you get hits you get hits on usually template files, right? But from template files, pop your Sherlock hat on and you can work out the layout files. So this one's an unusual one actually, because this one is actually, it's not actually a Magento module if you look here. It's the actual Luma theme where this layered nav actually exists in its full form, because it's skinned a little bit. The default layered nav is actually it is a module, but it actually has different front end code, interestingly enough. So the Luma one uses these collapsible divs, right? I think the blank one, it might not be the blank one, it might just be the base module of Magento. I'm not sure if the blank one then extends it. Uses DDs and DTs. So that's how you know what theme you got, really. You can check the layered nav and you can check that there's you can check the code here. So essentially, right, we're not extending a module, right? We're extending this front end template file, essentially. And the module here, Magento _layered nav, is actually in, as I say, in Luma theme here with a few other things. So this is the code I want to be having an effect on. So now, right, I need to figure out where, because it's only, again, like I forgot to sort of mention, these are just the template files. There's no layout files in here for the layered nav. So it's not, the blocks are global. The blocks are coming from a module somewhere, but the layered nav, the actual templates are coming from the theme in this, or your base theme. So as I say, put your Sherlock hat on. What are we going to search for, right? So we've got a hidden view PHTML, layer view PHTML. So the next thing I'm going to search for is layer view.phtml, and what I'm going to find is I'm going to find that referenced in, look, in a layout file. Okay, so we've got two here. We've got two because, so, you know, we've always had this right through any version of Magento, right back to version 1 Magento. We've got the catalog search for your result. You've got your index for your results, which is your search page that you land on, which is essentially a category in its layout. And you've got the one for the category. And here's the XML file. So this is how I found out what XML file I'm going to need in my module. There we go. Because that's what I'm going to be working with, this guy here. So I'll keep that open because that's going to be useful. I also really want to keep open my the other one, which I unfortunately closed, but I'm wondering if I can still just get it back. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to keep this open. So keep these things open because these are going to be useful. Right. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my module now, right at the top, and I am going to start putting in the relevant files. So for front end, so I'm going to say catalog category view type layered.xml. And again, you know, with my condition, what I mentioned with regards to spelling things and reading, that with the wizard plugin is really useful here, and also obviously VS Code is helping me straight away. If I spell something wrong here and I don't do it correctly, my boilerplate code doesn't come up because the plugin doesn't recognise it as being as being something that it can scaffold out. So this is quite. All these little triggers are quite useful for me. And again, for beginners, if you don't know what you're expecting, you know, regardless of whether you can read or write well, you'll know if you've done something wrong through an experience if your boilerplate code doesn't show up. So that Magento wizard is really, really useful. And now, obviously, it's given me this, and I just need to take that out there. However, right, you've got to be careful of the boilerplate code sometimes, what it inserts in. This is going to screw us right up because the category, particularly on my demo and majority of the time, is 2 columns, right? So this specifying as 1 column as like a standard boilerplate ain't gonna fly, and it's gonna cause you a problem. So I take that away, right? And now I've got a nice blank slate to work with here. So if I go back to my the version of the file that I want to work with, the next thing I need to sort of identify is which block I want to sort of start my insert my code into first, because looking at these blocks, and I'm making an assessment here, layered view and looking at this is it's everything, isn't it? It's not each individual option, it's the wrapper around the options, and you can tell that by looking at this code. Look, you've got state being inserted as a child node here, and then layer state, so once you've selected filters, comes up at the top, and then you've got your actual filters, and then you've got your headings and your filters, but your actual options within the filters are sort of here. So I need to add, and we can tell this from the front end, look. So if I go in here, I need to add an option into here. And if I start adding a block, and I'll tell you what, we'll do it. So I need to add, I'm going to start by adding, by affecting the view PHTML. I'll reference it. So that's what I'm going to do now, reference. That was the word I was looking for. So I'm going to reference the view PHTML. And just for ease of, right, I'm going to copy off here. So I'm going to copy off another one of them. So I'm going to say reference block. Okay, and it gives me what I need there off my boilerplate. And I'm going to, and the block view is saved from there, catalog left nav. Right, so that's the one that I'm getting hold of. It's the global sort of catalog left nav. So if I bang that in there like that, I'm now saying I'm going to reference that block, but I'm going to now add some extra bits to it. So I'm going to add a new template file and point it to a different template. So I could call this anything. I could probably be best calling it view, to be honest, but I'm going to call it categories, just so I know the difference. And I'm going to put categories, like I've sort of said here, straight in my templates folder, because I've got no other folder that's expecting to find categories directly in here. Right. Right, it gives me some boiler. I'm just going to say that in there, and I want to see this on the front end. Now I just need to double check. So there's a tip when I'm working locally. I like to make sure I've got these caches off, because then any change I've just made to layout will come through. Full page, all that type of stuff just needs to refresh for me on the fly. So let's see if it works. Right, it's not working because I believe I'm going to need to, I've just added a new module. So I'm going to need to run Big 4. So I'm going to need to run setup upgrade, di compile, etc, etc. So I'll tell you what, I am going to just pause it. Right, and so sorry, I've refreshed it before I started recording again, but basically, yeah, that block is now replacing the whole navigation, because it's catalog nav, which sort of proves that it's the whole that's the whole file, and I want to sort of add some new functionality into a block within that file. And you might say, well, why don't I just target the next block down, which would be where is it? How can I explain this? Where is it? Right, so why don't I just target the next block down, which would be, well, there isn't one, is there? So I was going to say the next block down, but there isn't one. There's blocks within it. Look, there was state, which I showed. There was and then there's just the filter. There's just the filter. So I could target the filter, but then that's going to keep the title, and it's just going to replace the filter. So I need to put my new functionality inside it with the other filters, don't I? You know, it's like it's adding. I'm appending it to the navigation. I can't just go replacing stuff, because it's a filter of arguments, isn't it, of different sort of dynamic functionality. So yes, I'm gonna have to do something a little bit different than just inserting a block or just replacing a template. So where do I go? Right, well, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to copy the code from view.html on the original laid nav from within the Luma theme, and I'm going to paste it into my categories. And that's because I'm going to add my block as a child HTML inside this. So it sort of appends to it, or well, it'll be at the top, so it'll append to it, and it'll be part of the navigation inside the same sort of like inside the same class div as all the other possible dynamic ones, like price and stuff. And that way it'll utilize the same jQuery accordion functionality, and I'm basically writing less code. I'm just inserting my functionality in there. So, but first of all, I need to sort of replicate the nav from the theme. So, because I've got to insert my block inside that nav. So it's back, right? The nav's back and it's all working, right? Now I want to add my block in here, and looking at the front end code, filters. I want it sort of in here, don't I? Filter content. I want it inside filter content. So I want my block to be below shopping options title, and then there, like as part of one of these. So I need to add it to the layer essentially. Right. So how do I do that? Right. Well, what I do is I'm gonna use a specific piece of code which well, I'll show you now. So, right, where are we? We are in this one. Okay, so I found where I wanted to be sort of adding my filter, and it was inside. Sorry, it's hard to see. Right, filter options, content. So essentially, it's here, right? I want to add my new block here. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Sort of like, yeah, that looks about right to me. That below the title and as a new block, but I want to add the same code. So where do I get this code from? Well, you know, the code for here. Well, what I would do actually is I would just, on this occasion, just copy it from the front end and change some bits. Right, so I'm gonna need the title bit. Where is it? It's here. So let's grab this and let's put it into a new file in here, and I'm going to call it links. No, I'm going to call it layered links because it's like category links. Layered is the folder, and then in there, just in case in the future I had any other types of links or list to that area, I'll have it in a different folder, HTML. Right. So I'm just gonna test out the HTML and make sure it all fits and works. So we'll change that to categories. Make sure there's no reference to links there. So that's the title. And I also need to make sure that it's filter options item, which is something else, that this one here. So in fact, it confused me because there was only one on here, but it's actually this that I need. I need the whole thing here. And I'm just going to remove what I don't need. So we'll just jump into that, and I'm just going to bang all that in there. And then I'm going to get rid of like the list items, because I'm going to generate those with my block. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. Right, so I'm going to have categories, and then we'll say like list to do, and it's going to be displayed none by default, which is fine, because then the JavaScript's going to take over. I just want to make sure there's no other references to price. Right, if I save that there, and that's in links, and now I've got to include, because I've got to include this block links. I've got to reference it as a block in my layout file here. So I changed this block to like an open block rather than terminating here. I'm going to terminate it here because I'm going to stick my block in the middle. And for speed, I have written this block before. So I'm going to add a new block. Well, actually, I can use my wizard to do it, and it won't take me that long. So we'll go into layout block, and it's added all the bits that I need. And the important bit on here, for now anyway, is my as one, right? And my as one is how I'm going to reference it in the outer block here. So what you can do is I can add this as a dependency almost of this, right? And I can add it into then this template. And for now, I don't need a class, I don't think, right? But if it errors, then I'll write the block. Because the block is at my reference, and my block is actually going to go in that one. And I'm going to call it categories custom cat links, and then my template. And just for ease, I'm just going to grab it from here. And then I'm going to say, what was it, layered, and then links.phTML. Okay, right, and so that should be enough to display my links in here, right? So now I'm going to add a child HTML tag, basically. And what this looks like, I think I might have done it on videos before, is it's basically a PHP tag, and PHP tags don't look like that. This one looks like that. And I'm going to echo, and then I say this, and then you use the as class, and then you use the as class off of the block. So you're referencing basically this here. That's how you would sort of reference a specific one. Get child HTML, and then you open your query and you pass in the as, just like that. That should do it. So now we should get some boilerplate code coming through. Yes, right, look at that, list to do. So we've now successfully inserted our categories into the rec. You know, if we get some more in here in future, it's just going to fit real nicely, right? But that's a custom one. So that's basically showing a block within a block. And that works really good because that way we're not having to sort of insert the categories outside of the layered nav and then move it in with jQuery or JavaScript or anything like that. We're going right, we're injecting it right in there, right to like the source of where we need it. Okay, so now we need some custom functionality here because we need to go get some categories. So this is where we get onto the actual block. But this video, to be fair, is more about the method. It's more about safely stepping through this process, catching your problems or potential problems as you go. Because obviously this is fairly simple, you know, in and of itself, but there's loads of different pitfalls and loads of different places where you can just make a little error and your whole module looks as if it ain't working, and it'd be hard to find out where it's broke. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go on to probably the programmatic code, which is for me, it's probably a little bit, it's probably the most complicated part, the most abstract bit, because you can't really see it until you see some output. So what I'm going to create is a block in here. I'm going to call it categories.php. Okay, and I know I've sort of got this all in the right place because it's given me my template code. Right then, and I know now there's a few things here, but I want to get my I've got my template. I'm extending the template essentially, so I don't need anything more complicated than that. So what do we need? Right, well we'll start with the template, and then we need to go get, and I know this from doing other modules, but we need these two classes in our constructor. We need the category helper, and we're going to get the menu from the category factory. And the way you sort of structure this is like so. So I want to go to the constructor, I want to get them, and then I want to utilize those things in my function, what I'm going to write. Okay. And I need to add some protective functions to the top here. Okay, so we've got category helper, which we're referencing here, and we've got category factory. Actually, thinking on, I don't think I need catalog layer. I don't think I need that. Not sure if I need category helper either. Do I need the category helper? Am I using this? So obviously, what you end up doing when you do this over and over and over again, you copy and paste a lot of stuff, right? And you end up with, it's actually, this is a lesson, to be honest. You end up with a lot of shit that you probably don't even need in there, and it just ends up being bloaty code. Don't think I need the category helper. That might have been something else that I had in. So once upon a time I'd have written a module and it wouldn't have just had one function in it, which was getting the categories. It might have had some layered nav functionality or something, so I might have needed the category helper for something else. It might have even been for getting the ID of the current category or something like that, which I don't need to do in this instance. So do you know what? I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. I'm literally going to get the category factory, and that is it. And I'm going to see if I can get the category list from the category factory only. And now I'm going to write a public function. So public function, and I am going to call it get child categories. Get child categories will do, and it will accept a category ID because I'll be able to pass that from the front end because it'll know what category it's in. And then, because I'm using the category factory here, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write a create function. So I'm going to basically initialize the category factory and pass it to this variable here, which is category. And then I'm going to load the category by the category ID that I'm passing in. I'm just copying this from something else, but I'm going to rewrite it to help it, to show that it's, that I understand it, and that, for you guys to sort of see what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm going to pass that to the category, and then I'm going to get a collection. And I've got this one from earlier, so I have got a category collection. And if you do a quick search on the internet, you'll also find a good category selection. So I'm going to keep this functionality to make sure that only categories show that are enabled in the menu. And what I mean by that is in the back end, in categories. I bet you this logs me out. Yes, of course it does. Always. I think you know the functionality I'm on about. Basically being able to switch certain categories off in the back end, and then that'll pick it up without disabling them. And I'm just going to have them ascending. And for the purposes of this, now that's bad for me. I don't need to go get every variable, and I can refine this and just get name and URL maybe in the future. But for the purposes of this, to make sure it works, or at least for your first run, put an asterisk in there, and you definitely know that it's like stepping through possible issues. You might use an incorrect naming convention of the attributes you're getting, and then nothing will show, or the wrong link will show, something like that. But I think for your first pass, go for a start and then refine your module later on, is my advice. Okay, and then the filter. Right, so this is an important bit, right? So from the category collection, I'm getting the category by ID, and then I'm getting the children of that category, because what I want to do is I want to pass the current category, which will be the parent's ID, to this filter or to this category collection, but then I want the variable from that category which gets the children. So I'm automatically going and getting the children that are available for the parent category. So that's the block written, and I'm just going to run this and make sure that I don't get any errors. Right, so I'm not getting any errors, but we'll see what it outputs. Obviously, if I'd done something wrong in here, Magento would have kicked off and told me, if I'd named something incorrectly. Right, so how do we get the category? How do we use this function in our template? Well, that bit is fairly straightforward, okay? So I need to go into my links, HTML, and then, right, I'll make a bit of a space here. Up at the top here, is probably the best place to do it. I want to get categories, right? So I need to pass this categories equal, and then I can use get block, right? And I've just twigged that I have missed a step, which I'll go back to. And it's probably a good job I missed it, so that means I can explain what would have gone wrong. Get child categories. Right, so that started it off for me. Right, I've just written a new block, and I need to pass this class into mine. And the class is basically, with backslashes, the link to your PHP file you've just created. So you can basically get it from here, look. So I can grab that, and I'll just close that for now. And I can paste that there, but it's missing something, and it's missing the final namespace, which is categories. Right, and that's because that comes from there, basically, which was the name of the file. So that is now using functions from within here. So i.e. this function here. So I know that passing this class, basically it's accessible now in links here, right? So I can use block. But also I need to pass it an ID, don't I? So where do I get that ID from? Well, Magento has something really useful now. And it's this request params. And I can get the ID of the current category, look, by using this request params. Get param. And I can pass that in. And we're just going to test that that's all okay. Oh, just gangly bit of code left over by me. Right, so nothing's breaking. I think we're okay to pass to the next bit. If not, we can always come back. So now I'm going to look through my categories. So it's a dead simple function really, but first of all I'm going to protect it with an if statement because I don't want it to try and loop through categories if there are none that exist. And I'm going to say count, and I'm going to count categories, and if I count the categories and they're greater than 0, then I'm going to step through the categories. Basically I'm going to loop through the categories, and actually I want this right at the top because if there's no categories I don't want to show the title categories. And you know what, I'm going to tidy up this now as well because I would slap a junior's wrist if they didn't do this. Not physically, you're not allowed nowadays. And I would just make it so it is I've had a complete mental block there. Oh, there we go. I want to make it a proper string. Right, that looks right to me. Okay. What am I getting here? Right. So I need to end my if statement. Nice and simple. And then in here is where I'd put my for each. And I'm going to say for each categories, so categories has, so it's a child. It's actually the children that we're getting, not the parent. We're getting the children from the parent, I should say. Right, so I'll write the structure first, and then in here, so this is where we look at the boilerplate code, and it's basically it comes out as this. We can look at it in a second. So they're ordered lists, all of them. Actually, that's the wrong side of that div. You go ordered list, and then of items, and then inside of those items you have LIs. And then I'm getting the URL from the child, look, and the name from the child, and that's it. So I'll save that. And there they are, look. So I'm getting the URL from the child and the name. And that works as I wanted it to. And then that category doesn't have any inner categories, look, so it ain't showing. But if I go to clothing, there you are. Got my inner categories. So yeah, so that's it really. That it's simple. It's simple if you do it if you're careful and you do things in sort of for me, that's a good order to do things in to sort of minimise issues that you might have, or you know, almost saving the sort of the more difficult things to the end, which not the more difficult things, but the things that could go a little bit sort of pear-shaped, and you save them to the end. Then you know you're gonna make your life easy. You're basically taking your time and stepping through problems. So I hope that was useful for you. If you like this type of content, smash a like on the video. Put that in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in the next one.